They say if you stare too long into the abyss will stare back at you. And I've been staring into the abyss of Pokemon news to try to figure out what's going on with Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, as because of a tweet that I've done videos like this in the past, like, oh, let's go and check out the old X and Y news to see what that means for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and Pokemon Sun and Moon and all that. I've done like 5 videos of this, so I didn't know if people would be excited for having this with Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and that's where I got this tweet right here. As there's no Ultra Sun and Moon news, would you consider doing some Cerebi archive diving and then comparing the potential information lineup? And then the response was, everyone wants this, pretty much. So that's when I started going into the archive. I started with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, comparing it to Ultra Sun and Moon, and I don't know what is going on with Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. Pretty much, what I've discovered at this point is that there is no timeline. There is no way of figuring out what the Pokemon Company is going to do when it comes to Pokemon news, because every game has been unique, and I guess we could have kind of figured that out with X and Y into Sun and Moon, but when we start going back into like Black and White too, because that's what these people were asking for, like, you know, not even just Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and Ultra Sun and Moon, it was Black and White 2 as well, and kind of looking how far back the news rabbit hole goes, and that's why we're in this position right now. So, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it had an interesting reveal, because we had Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire into Korokoro, much like we did with Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. But for Sun and Moon, with regular Sun and Moon, not just Ultra Sun and Moon, and that's where the terminology is going to get crazy, so you might have to listen close. It seems like Korokoro took a backseat, and then the Pokemon Company stepped up and started bringing the major information, and at the same time, we had, like, no trailer for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and this was in May. So we're getting a later announcement for Ultra Sun and Moon, which means there might be less news to kind of go off of, but then we have effectively the same amount of gameplay, if that. Like, we actually saw new forms with Ultra Sun and Moon. We don't really get to see too much big stuff going on with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, unless you, like, really look. I think I might have clicked on the wrong picture, yeah. Unless you, like, really look into the information behind it, because I did a speculation video saying, doesn't Groudon and Kyogre look different? So it was hinting at the new forms, like the primal forms for Kyogre and Groudon, but it wasn't really confirming anything when you're just kind of looking at that. And then we got the Korokoro news, which kind of showed some differences. That was it. And it was effectively the same. So I think we might have even gotten less news on the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire announcement. By comparison, it doesn't show screenshots of the game, but just happens on what we saw with the TV trailer. So that's kind of it right there. Alright, so the announcement was pretty hype. People were waiting for that remake game. Now let's go into June of 2014 for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Mostly, it's what you'd expect. It's just updated information, like, yeah, we know the characters from Ruby and Sapphire. We know what's going on, but then more Mega Evolutions. And that was kind of like the big tag that we see here. It's like, oh, Deontay, so we get 6th Gen Mega Evolution, as well as 3rd Gen Starter Mega Evolutions to round out Blaziken, which already existed in Pokemon X and Y. Then we see our new trainers. We kind of get that with the trainers in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but according to Philly Beach and some other people that have been like doing analysis of the trailer, we look different. So it is a trainer redesign in Ultra Sun and Moon, like how we saw with Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and at least that was a page in Korokoro. Korokoro for both June and July so far has given us nothing. That there's not even a teaser. It doesn't say come back next month for Ultra Sun and Moon in July's Korokoro. So August is looking pretty grim right there, but by this time in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, 1 month in, we had a good amount of news. We knew the direction of the game roughly. We could see the art design, we could see that there was something different going on. We have all kinds of like ultra forms and craziness going on, and then the speculation really took off. Flygon, Milotic, what Pokemon are going to get those Ultra forms? And then as we saw like Archie and Maxie, wait, their signature Pokemon, how about those Mega Evolutions into Camerupt and Sharpedo? So those predictions started coming along. July, we actually got confirmation of secret bases, even though it wasn't via Korokoro. So this is where Pokemon again stepped in with official news. That's why it's so hard to predict, like, who's going to take the reins. Is Korokoro going to give all the information? Is the official Pokemon Company going to give all the information? What's going on? And then we got information on the updated secret bases, which was pretty cool. And then that went into like the pre-release screenshots, which there's a lot of. We got a lot of information regarding Korokoro, or regarding Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire before the game came out. So that was kind of nice to look at. But July was pretty much that, and then we got more Megas. So that's going to be Mega Metagross, and then we get to see some other things. Oh, Brawly, yeah. So we had trainer redesigns, like trainer reimaginings. We don't have any of that right now. We don't even know if it's gyms. I feel there's enough information to potentially have the same rate of news that we did with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Because yeah, you can show like, oh, how different do all the trainers look? You know, what about the island challenges? What about gyms? What about all this other stuff going on? We even got to see there was more with like the Pikachu. Cosplay Pikachu, there's our secret bases and information. There was a lot of cool stuff going on that we got to be hype about, and then more Mega Pokemon, reimagining for the Dex Nav as well. So little bits of information that we could get hype over, and then just kind of more adding onto it. So they were getting some pretty good features just a couple months in when it came to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but nothing on Ultra Sun and Moon. August comes around, and then more Megas. So this might be the biggest problem. If we do not get an announcement for new Megas, new forms, or like I'm talking about Alolan forms, or even new Pokemon, I feel there's a slim possibility that because the Pokedex was so small in Sun and Moon that we could be getting new Pokemon. That even though the Pokedex was small in X and Y, we had Megas. Now we do have Alolan Pokemon, but many more Mega Pokemon were introduced than Alolan forms were. So I'm thinking more Alolan forms are definitely a possibility. That's not going to screw with the Pokedex. If anything, it lines up with the canon of the game. So it's not going to be like making a big stretch. Like just throwing in Mega Evolutions, so Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, that seems like a bigger stretch than introducing Alolan forms. Also, maybe just new Pokemon being discovered in the Alola region. If there's more islands, if there's an expanse upon the region, then that's all possible. However, we already knew about Mega Pokemon by this time with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Ultra Sun and Moon needs to have a big announcement, or else it's going to be dry, because I was looking at all the other announcements, it's Megas. That when it came to any big news reveal for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it was new Pokemon forms in the Mega Evolutions. If we don't have new forms, then what do we have for Ultra Sun and Moon news? And that's where things started getting, like, maddening, because how do you judge Black and White 2 news? That's the serious question right now, because this was before Pokemon was doing worldwide releases. That it was actually announced in February of 2012 and then released in June of 2012, and then everything got really weird going into X and Y. So the announcement of Black and White 2 is going to be different, because the news for Pokemon games before the 6th generation was really screwy. That Japan did get like a little bit of TV show stuff that, like, I remember seeing the Zoroark when they did like the Pokemon TV. They had the Zoroark outline and then some of the other starters for the 5th generation announcement. That was pretty good. Also, Korokoro was posting new Pokemon, and that update was really well. But when it came to Black and White 2, there was no news. I checked February, so here's the announcement for Pokemon Black and White 2. March had nothing. Actually, March was a really screwy month. So Pokemon Black and White 2 was announced before Pokemon Black and White was released outside of Japan. So Cerebi was really pimping out their guides right here. Pokemon Black and White 2 are out worldwide. To remind you that this is the guide for the playthrough, gym leaders, all the swarms, all the events, all that big information right there. But even then, like, Cerebi wasn't as large, news wasn't as large, the Pokemon community wasn't as large when it came to the information, because outside of Japan, it just dropped. Like, you never really got much of a heads up. You'd see a TV commercial, you'd see a poster at GameStop. You wouldn't really have like this huge online following, and I didn't really care about Pokemon news until after Black and White 2. Like when the Pokemon X and Y, when the 6th generation news started picking up, that's when I started following Pokemon news, not for 5th gen, not for 4th gen, not for anything like that. It was pretty much, I have like the official Pokemon magazine. Yeah, there it is. Outside of Japan, this is all we got pretty much for like Pokemon news. So it's like, oh, here's your Heart Gold, Soul Silver, buy it, see in a few months. It's a new adventure like you've seen in the 2nd generation. You start in New Barktown and then you pick your starter Pokemon. So it's one of the most eagerly awaited games of 2010. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. They even tease it. I just read this right here. It said, what do you not know? Okay, wait. So, what is there that you don't know about the most eagerly awaited game of 2010? Lots. They tease you with how little you know back then. So that's why I mean, like, when it came to 6th generation, I'm actually a big fan of the major news drops. I've been seeing a lot of people saying like, oh, there was too much news for X and Y, oh, there was too much news for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Sun and Moon. I loved it. I don't feel those things spoiled me at all. It's just that I think people are a little too sensitive about spoiler alerts these days, and they feel that any slight little bit of information can ruin it for them because then they overthink it. I prefer getting like a massive news overhaul because that's just hype to me. I don't feel it was overhyped for Pokemon Sun and Moon. I still really enjoyed that game, so I don't really see any issue with getting like all of the news that we've been getting for the 6th generation, but I feel it comes with the global lineup, that Japan puts out news, the Pokemon company outside of Japan puts out the news, Cerebi, YouTubers, and all these other people started covering it for the first time, and we had like this massive news blow up where everyone was on the same page. Everyone was getting ready for Pokemon news at the same time. It's like new Pokemon revealed, everyone knew about it, everyone cared, everyone got hyped for the 6th generation. And even with all the like the news, like people are like, oh, all the news ruins the game. Well then, why did Pokemon Sun and Moon outsell X and Y, and why did X and Y outsell Pokemon Black and White? Like the games kept selling more and more copies even with all of this news with the global lineup. So I don't really see any drawbacks to it whatsoever. And because of that, yeah, we had like these really weird timing and launch sequences for the longest time. But then we went to April. Nothing. No Pokemon Black and White 2 news. We went to May. Nothing, no Pokemon Black and White 2 news. It's talking about like Black and White events and releases and stuff. And then at the beginning of the month, so it came out in June. At the beginning of June, that's where we got our trailer. That's where we got information. That's where we started seeing more about Pokemon Black and White 2. Updates on the Dream World, the Dream Radar trailer, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So the mechanics came in really late. Then there wasn't a lot of news. And then, by the way, like we got Korokoro, which was mostly just kind of like talking about the movie and the Therian form. So we finally got the Therian form reveal, I guess, but it was in the same month. So it looks like a big amount of the information came out. It's like later this month, June 23rd. Then we're going to get all of our big Black and White news. And then it looks like there was just a little bit more information. So there was a different magazine, not Korokoro, provided the first few glimpses of the earlier areas of Black and White 2. So it actually looks more like a strategy guide than anything. Like you just get the first couple pages of the Black and White 2 strategy guide inside the magazine. So yeah, there we go. That's all of your information right there. Kind of shows the layouts, kind of shows some trainers, Pokemon you encounter, and stuff like that. So there was like the pre-release stuff, the early game reviewers, the early kind of stuff like that. It wasn't as massive of a leak scale as we've seen, and then the game just came out, and that was kind of it for Pokemon Black and White 2. So really using Black and White 2 for a comparison to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, I guess it's a possibility, and that's kind of like the reality that we don't really want. But at the same time, I feel that no news is worse than getting too much news when it comes to Pokemon information or just gaming news in general. I like getting hype. I like seeing all the new things that could be happening. I feel with Ultra Sun and Moon, there is enough. I might have to do a separate video on it, because there is enough to kind of do a big news announcement every couple of weeks, at least 1 month, maybe even 2 a month, and then still have some big stuff coming across, and that's going to be it. So yeah, Mega Green Alpha Sapphire had a lot of information, but was mostly new Pokemon based, and then Black and White 2, because of the split between the worldwide releases and just the awkward game releases at that time, it really didn't have any news until the month it was released. So at the very least, we'll just get a lot of information on the month it's coming out. But then we also have some other games holding us over. We have Pokken Tournament DX, so maybe Pokemon Company isn't trying to overshadow that since the Switch is doing well, unlike the Wii U. And then we also have the Gold and Silver Virtual Console, which a lot of people are going to be hyped for. So again, it's impossible to predict Pokemon. X and Y was different to Sun and Moon, even though they're main series games. Black and White was different to Omega Green Alpha Sapphire, even as like sequel remakes. The Ultra Sun and Moon is very unpredictable at this point. We got a little bit of information, and now almost a month and a half later, no information even past E3. All we have the same amount of information about the Pokemon game coming out in 2018 almost. And that's kind of it. So if you guys enjoyed the video, so even though like I was requested to do like all the diving to get all the information, seems like there's really not much we can draw from conclusions right here, and that's why I'm kind of going insane right now, trying to figure all this stuff out. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.